Okay, so this is a blank off the press, and I can deal with different clays. It's about 17 7/8 here now, and I keep notes here. If I shrink this to about 16 inches, at this dimension it would fire to a 16-inch sink, which is pretty much a standard. But since this is porcelain, it shrinks a little more, so I'm gonna lay it out a little bit, and I need to take it out about 3/8 of an inch. So what I'm going to do, just to be sure the rim is compressed, is I'm going to put a little water on there. Got to have a little water to lubricate it. And then I'm going to use a tool here, a piece of plastic, to compress that. And then I'm not pushing out very much, because if I push out very much I'll make it too big. But I'm running my finger with some water lubricant around that bull-nosed edge. And then I'm gonna take one of these funny looking tools, and I'm gonna use that. And what I'm doing is I'm compressing that edge so I don't have any chance that I'm gonna get a surface crack on that edge. Now if I want to, I can come in here and I can create some line work, because the line work will increase the tone range on the glaze. So this is a piece of chamois, and chamois people used to use on their cars. I don't guess they do anymore. But I'm going to wet that up, and then I'm going to wrap it around there, and if you cultivate a good sharp thumbnail, I'm pressing in on that chamois and I'm drawing a line, and that line will pick up some tone range on the glaze. Plus it gives sort of a graphic detail at the top of the sink. I'm doing all this without pushing out very much, because if I push out much I'm going to disturb the uniformity of this. Okay, so you want to pay close attention to this. I'm just telling you commentary so you know what I'm doing.
Yeah, it might be good to just say it.
I've got a piece of chamois on this tool, and I've wet the sink now.
Yeah.
This doesn't last very long, and you got to hold your hand just so. And if I make a nice expanding spiral there, it looks good because it collects different thicknesses of glaze, which increases the tonal range on the glaze. But that looks simple to do, but it's not for most people, because you've got to hold your hand steady in space when you're doing it. You don't have any way of bracing yourself. So I put that in here, and I still haven't made this sink as big as I want, so I'm going to put some more water out here for lubrication. And then I'm gonna sport the rim on the outside, but here with my left hand I'm pushing out, and I'm not left-handed, but I guess I'm somewhat ambidextrous, because you have to be able to use both hands. So I've pushed out a little bit, but I want to see how much I've pushed out. I've still got about 1/8 of an inch to go, and so I'm pushing out just a little more. It's much harder to push the sink in than it is to push it out. So I don't want to go too far, and that's 18 1/4, which is what I want. And so this particular clay body will shrink to 16-inch, which, you know, to keep a certain amount of uniformity in the stock sinks, we try to pay attention to the size. And I take all of these, which are trimmings, and I just dump them in the water. And dumping them in the water will help reconstitute the clay, and I'll throw that right back in the pug mill. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just drying the rim. I want to dry the rim enough so that I'm going to turn this over on a bat. And if the rim is too damp, it'll stick to the bat. So I'm just rotating the heat gun around here, and we'll be really careful, because if I get this too dried out, that rim will crack. And so I keep this heat gun moving. Heat gun's pretty close, but this is a big circumference here, and so it's only pointing at a certain part of the rim for a very brief time as it goes around. You want to be careful and not get a lot of heat down around the hole, because that hole can crack. And what I usually do here is I stop and I take and put something like this and I drop that right in the middle and I cover that middle hole up, because that hole is very small circumference, and so it can accumulate the heat more quickly than this rim. And I just run my finger across the top, and running my finger across the top I can feel the clay lose its tackiness and become drier. So all I want to do here is get that clay dry enough that it won't stick to a bat. Now I'm going to flip it over and this sink is more or less done. So this is a sink without an overflow, because I trimmed off the part that would have been used for the overflow. Standard 16-inch diameter, which is a typical size for a bath sink. I make these with spiral line work or without. Some people like the line work, some people don't. Personally, I like the line work because it gives more variety to the glaze. And so gradually the rim will dry out. I could use a propane torch, but the risk of cracking the rim is much higher. So I'd rather take more time with a heat gun and lower the risk of damaging the piece. Now if I turn this over with that too dry, with it too wet, I can actually flatten that piece of the rim. So I'm going to take this out. Now if this works out about right, that sink is just slightly bigger than the bat. That bat is 18 inches. Put my hand under it, put my hand over, and I flip it over. If you can see, there's a little bit of that spiral from the inside showing through, because it altered the outside contour a little bit because I pressed pretty deep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten that down just a little bit to reestablish the smooth curve. And of course, anything you do on the wheel, you have to have a little bit of water, because the water is the lubricant. And then this tool will make a nice smooth sweep. And so this is just the final finish up. Sometimes I get a crack right here because the sink is a little thick there, so I use a tool to compress it, and then I round this off a little bit. I want this to be straight, so I use another tool in here to straighten this out. And then I'm going to stamp the business name in it. So I've got a couple of things here. The business says Main Kilnworks, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it like so. That's the business name. And I'm going to take this, which is a little stamp that I made that is tells me what clay that is. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put numbers. And I'm going to put the green diameter. So this is 18 1/4, so I'll put 18.25. Which would be 18.25, which is 18.25 inches. So that tells me I can measure this when it's finished and determine exactly how much shrinkage on this sink, so I can adjust the future ones. So that more or less finishes the sink. to dry. You dry it with the rim down, because if you dry it with the rim up, the rim would dry before the rest of it and you could get a crack. So cracks are caused when you have uneven shrinkage, uneven drying. So by drying this rim down, it'll dry more or less uniformly. So I can fill a whole table full of these, and this is just one example of what I can make from one plug.